we will share them with you after the session, not directly after, but probably by tomorrow. So if you miss anything, make sure that, get back and look into it. So person speaking right now, it's me, it's Maziar Sal. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at ReQtest. With me, I have Karandeep Singh. We usually just call him Karan. He's our customer-facing project manager at GlobalLogic LTD. And we're here to present together on a webinar for Plan, Track, and Report. So thank you all for joining us. And we'll be just starting off now. Karan, do you see my presentation?
Yes, Maziar.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll just go ahead. If you see it, then the rest should as well. All right. So before we get ahead with the presentation, the part of this webinar is really to be as interactive as possible. So during the webinar, if you have any questions or any thoughts whatsoever, make sure to ask them in the QA box in the bottom middle of your Zoom application. You should find it right about here. It says QA, and you just ask your questions there. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of questions that you might ask that, now later, that I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find the answers and direct us help pages, which you can just access from the application itself. You always have the support@reqtest.com if you have any support related questions. And in case you like what you see and what you see here, or have other thoughts of how you could improve your business, don't forget that that's why we have customer success management, which is your person at ReQtest that's here to support you in making sure that ReQtest is delivering quality in your projects. All right. So before I begin with the actual presentation, I think a presentation of Karan and GlobalLogic is a place. So for those of you who don't know, GlobalLogic is a global digital product engineering services company. They're an R&D supplier and R&D partner for many familiar companies. I myself have worked at Ericsson once upon a time and have very good recollections of working with GlobalLogic at that time. GlobalLogic was founded in 2000, so not a very old company, fairly young and hungry. They have their headquarters in San Jose, California, and employ about 16,000 people across 14 countries. And that's GlobalLogic for you. Now at GlobalLogic, our R&D partner, we have Karan as our customer-facing project manager that will be co-presenting with me, and he has 14 years of experience. And just to summarize, how GlobalLogic is our partner here, they help us develop ReQtest. They are a supplier, R&D supplier. Just for the background, GlobalLogic uses the Jira's development tracking tool, while we use ReQtest, and we'll show you how we actually interact. So Karan's main job with us is really to make sure that we have good collaboration, that they can keep on delivering good qualitative feature improvement and product improvement. He needs to always keep track about the cost and output of the evaluation. You need to make sure that he's communicating well with us and we understand what's going on, what are being planned, what's the progress of the planned items, and when will they be delivered. What I like personally most about Karan is that he makes sure that we always have precise and up-to-date status information and the flexibility of retrieving that kind of information in my projects at all time. He'll tell a little bit about that journey and how he got there. Didn't happen in one day, but I think that's the story that we're going to go with. So for this webinar, what you see on the presentation, that's basically what I'm going to start with, and I'm just going to go and try to set the context of this webinar and the goal of this webinar. And then I'm going to try to be a bit quiet to let Karan speak. And Karan is going to take us through the customer story, which is how GlobalLogic worked with their customer, ReQtest, the challenges he had, the journey he had for that solution. And he will also show you how he utilizes ReQtest to make sure that we have a good way of planning and tracking reporting. We'll go to some key takeaways, and then we have the Q&A section where you can ask ReQtest or Karan whatever kind of questions that you feel is relevant and would be of value to you or the other people in this webinar. So why do we have this webinar? Well, I think in the beginning of this year, when we deployed our new requirement management module, we saw that we got even greater capabilities for working with an R&D partner, and we started to really implement them in a way that we haven't done before. So we want to really share with you the capabilities of ReQtest. I also want, when it comes to setting context, tell you that we fully understand that planning and reporting is very wide subjects to cover. And we understand that everything on planning and reporting can't be covered in this webinar or by ReQtest. So we try to focus on the part that ReQtest can cover, which is, ReQtest is here to manage your scope, your quality and tracking of your product deliverables. So we'll try to keep it at that. ReQtest is also a very flexible and customizable tool. What I want to say with that is that even though you will see one setup that Karan is using, I'm sure you have a different setup. And what's really important for you and your needs and your business and how ReQtest should be utilized for that, you probably have to some regard, think about that yourself, but you're not alone in this. This is, again, why we have customer success management. So if you want to utilize your ReQtest in the same way that Karan is doing, let us know. We'll support you with that. Or if you have another great example of utilizing ReQtest, let us know, and we'll take that knowledge and try to share it in the best way possible. Now, the goal with this webinar is to understand the ReQtest capabilities that can be utilized for the planning and reporting of your deliverables in your projects. Now, that's the ReQtest part. What I also want you to do from Karan's part is to gain insight from GlobalLogic ways of working with full transparency and collaboration with their customers, and in this case, specifically with ReQtest. So that's really for me. I think it's time for you, Karan, to step in and take it away.
Sure, Mazhar, sure. So can I share my screen?
Yeah. Yes.
So let me know once it's visible.
I see your slides.
Okay. So thank you, Mazhar, for the introduction and setting the agenda and context for this webinar, right? Hello, everyone, and a very good afternoon. And hope you all are doing great and staying safe and healthy. And from this webinar, my objective is actually to inspire you and enable and help you understand about ReQtest as an application, right? Which is more than just a requirement, bug, or test case capturing tool. Rather, it's a multi-dimensional tool that can be utilized to capture the real essence of other project management lifecycle, such as planning, tracking, and reporting. And amazingly, all that can be done using just this one tool, ReQtest. Now, as you already are aware that GlobalLogic is the R&D development partner for ReQtest. And before I jump onto my case study and showcase you how GlobalLogic as an R&D supplier use ReQtest for all its operational and functional, non-functional planning and tracking and reporting with its customer, let me give you a quick highlight on some key aspects of any customer supplier engagement, which I believe you all can easily correlate to in your own business setups that you are working in. And that will help you to understand our solution approach on why we use the ReQtest the way we use it, right? So the first key aspect was to identify my customer vision, right? Like in any business, every customer has some vision and expectations from their supplier. And as Mazhar has briefed you about, right? What is there, right? So at GlobalLogic, we use Jira for our development work, right? For our development life cycle, where our customer is itself ReQtest, right? So we have to identify one common ground for better collaboration, right? Where both sides continue to use their own respective tool, but have some common grounds where there is a better way of projecting the plans and tracking those plans and reporting those plans. Another key aspect where the customer always look forward to is cost versus output, right? They always really want to match the output of the work that R&D generates and with the cost invested, right? Streamline communication. Every customer has this expectation, okay, what are the tracks that we are planning? What is the progress of those tracks and when it will be delivered, right? Quality is always going to be the higher priority with the customers, and to have the precise and up-to-date status information available always is very key to any customer, right? And finally, a very important expectation is customers to have the flexibility to retrieve their reports on their own, right? On their own at any time, any hour of the day, irrespective of the time zone and irrespective of the supplier, right? So once these expectations and visions were clear, then we focused on the current challenges that we had in our hand, right? So no engagement, no collaboration is ideal in the world, right? You have to work your way up through those challenges. So what were those challenges? So first, right, both sides were very heavily invested in like using complex Excels, right? There were other document format for status updates, planning and execution, building a future roadmap, right? Everything was getting tracked through Excels. And it was getting difficult to track those multiple Excels through and which involved multiple tracks, right? And in a longer run, it was becoming super challenging to maintain and track those documents. The second part was like the dependency on supplier was heavy always, right? A supplier always has to fill the data first in those Excels, and then only your customer can look at those data and evaluate it, right? With multiple stakeholders coming into the picture and manipulating the same documents, we are aware there is a lot of data corruption that can happen, right? Based upon that. Data inconsistency is also one another challenge where the tool shows some data and the Excels we use have some other data, right? Sometimes we are inputting incorrect data, the dates and times are not updated, there is a data mismatch because people round the clock are working on the application. They change their status, they change their priorities, they input their work logs and estimates based upon whatever convenient time they are working. And when they are working on different time zones, the application will always have the real-time data where the Excels will be fed manually, right? Until you feed the data in Excels, you really don't get the clear picture on those things. And last but not the least was the data representation and interpretation issues, right? Between the customers and suppliers. As these are two different organizations, they have been so used to working in their own processes and different flows, workflows due to different tools at times, right? We are using Jira, they are using ReQtest, and it's also not case for two different tools. Sometimes both are working on the same tool, but it's just that the process definitions are different for two organizations, right? So once these challenges were known, then we were ready to work on them. So this is where our journey to solution came in, right? The solution is all about how we overcome all the challenges, right? And aligned ourselves to our customer vision and expectation. And I believe our solution journey could be applicable to all the business setups you all might be working in and in any capacity in terms of roles, be it like you might be a project manager, product manager, a customer interface manager, or even a development manager, right? Or a testing manager, right? So the first step toward this journey was that we moved away from the Excels and the documents that we were using in our customer meetings and to use only ReQtest for all our planning, tracking, and reporting part, right? And what followed after that was an iterative engagement cycle we established with our customer, where we created a shared terminology and a process with him, which was then followed by focusing on the very essential element that is structuring of our data in the tool itself as per customer needs. And once that was in place, to create some good views and some good reports to establish a clear communication for status reporting with our customer, right? So let me begin with what we mean and what we did in context to a shared terminology and process through live example, right? Yeah. So, so in case of like creating a shared terminology and a process, the first action or first thing that we did was we first defined the tracks that we were working on, right, with our customer. So as an R&D organization, right, so we work on various different tracks, right? So we develop new features, we are fixing customer reported critical bugs. There is a quality assurance team which is heavily invested on testing, And then we are working on some new enhancements requested by our customers to our sales representatives in form of these change requests, right? In form of these requirements that come. And then there are some tracks our process which are very process related, right? So we do hot fixes, we do feature development, but every organization somewhere is spending some time on these process related tracks. If you are following agile, you will follow scrums, you will have miscellaneous activities like deployment tasks, you have internal team connects, training, leave management, and customer support sometimes, right? So all these are tracks, right? So and as GlobalLogic is following the agile methodology, so we track our work through sprints, right? So we are completely agile oriented, and we are very focused on how we track our work out here. We follow sprints. So this was one another definition that we agreed with our client. We agreed on the duration of sprints. We do 2 weekly sprint. We have a fixed scrum team size, right? Which are developing some features. We are agreeing on the with the customer on the development hours that we spend, right, per resource per day. And we are estimating the hours overall spent by our team on any particular track also, right? So these kind of things, if you are in a development life cycle, you know where you spend your time. You really have to narrow down each and every track and then define it according to your customer expectations, right? So once this terminology, right? So once we have defined what our tracks are, we do hotfix, we do feature development, we do scrum management, we do sprint, we do task estimation, we do work logging, right? So once this was agreed, then we started focusing on our process part, right? So remember one thing, process definition is most critical part in any life cycle, right? As it will become the basis for your own views and reports that you will later on generate, right? So this require very focused efforts actually to define a process or a workflow which your customer actually has to be. So as part of this defining the workflows for requirements and test cases and bugs, for example, if my customer tomorrow asks me, right, generate a report to show me how many bugs are open and how many bugs are like closed and how many bugs are like in progress. So, right. So in that case, first, what we have to do is we all have to agree first on the definition of what is open. What I as a supplier means status as open, and customer has to agree on that status too. What is closed, right? Each status has its own significance. So when a bug is in progress or implemented, right, there are certain stages where the bug crosses through. It's in progress, is implemented, but it does not mean that it has been closed. It is still open, right? So this is the clear definition of the workflow that we need to get on board with our customers, right? Another example to share with you guys, right? So the way we function requirements, right? So there are two key aspects whenever we write a requirement also. This is one requirement if I take as example, right? So my product owner creates a requirement, right? He is at the initial stage, he is the owner of that requirement and he sets the status as open, right? He is detailing those requirements. He will set the status of that requirement to approved, right? So once that requirement is detailed by my product owner, it will go into the development life cycle where my development team will pick. A developer picks, he will assign it to himself, right? He becomes the owner of that ticket. Then he'll move into in progress as soon as he start working on it. Then once he's done, he will mark it as implement. My QA will come into picture. He will assign that particular CR or the requirement to himself and then test it. He will either mark it as fail or pass, right? And if it is passing, then finally he will be the one closing it. And if it fails, again the whole circle loops back, right? So ultimately, in this whole assignment, what we have to do is we have to understand the whole workflow has to be defined beforehand in order to create those reports which help in tracking and showing the progress of the work, right? So once my terminologies, once my processes and my workflows are all laid down, then we focus on the essential items, right? And that essential item is then structuring of my data, right, in the system. So I hope you all are well aware that recently, like 2 months back, in the early of starting of this year, that we released a new requirement management module, right? So with this new requirement management module, right, now available, data structuring can be done in a very effective and very logical way as compared to the old requirement management version module where we used to do the hierarchy, where we used to create the hierarchy based on folders, right? Levels are now better way of defining as compared to folders, as level contain much more level of information. You can structure the levels better as compared to what the folders could do. And best part, so best part about the levels is that we now have the capability of even customizing our levels, right? Earlier folders used, we could not customize. We can control how many levels you can create. What can be the definition of my levels? You can add as much as fields around in the levels. So now the levels itself can contain a lot of information, which earlier my folders could not be, which could not be achieved through the folders, right? With the new requirement module version available, right, we can now structure our tracks. As we discussed in our previous section, we said there are a lot of tracks that we are going to work on. Now, this is the way we are structuring our tracks. Tomorrow, if my customer asks me, let me know what are the overall open backlogs. So I have a level separately created for open backlog tickets. How many are there in deferred? I want to just have a section for deferred backlogs. Sprints, I can structure my sprints in particular level. I can restructure, and under the sub levels, I can structure my further sprint. I divided my sprints into 2 weeks time. Each sub level can further be divided into the tracks that you will be covering in those sprints, right? So the whole structuring part now can be easily done using this new requirement management module. Now, if any one of in your business setups, you are working in agile, right? And you are using sprints in your business, right? In new requirement management module, you can structure your requirements based upon sprints also, right? So now what we have done is we have given a system generated field is available right now, right? You can go to your requirement section. You can see now there is another field that we use now, development sprint. If you enable this sprint in your projects, right, so you can structure your whole hierarchy level based upon sprint. You can start tagging your requirements to a sprint, and at a very top level you can get a very good view based upon the sprint selection, right? It's just that one note, one should know that this field is available only in our new requirement module version. And if you're still using the old version, try to upgrade to the new version. There is no much impact from the old to new, but you will get some additional features. And remember, this development sprint field feature, right? It works perfectly fine with both type of projects, whether you are integrated with Jira or whether your project is a non-Jira project, right? You're just purely working on ReQtest. Yeah. So apart from above of these features to structure data, right? Some new other features are also available right now in the system that also enables you as a user to have a quick glance on your structure, right? So right now we have given this hierarchy column, right? A quick glance on, if you really want to know this requirement is placed under which particular parent level, right? So now you get this, all that access straight away out here. All these features are there for you. You can just select a specific particular hierarchy and you will get that information for that particular hierarchy, right? So these kind of some intuitive solutions are available right now, right? Another very good solution that we have for structuring of data is this one section called document view, right? If you are a product owner, if you are a business analyst, or even if you are a design lead who really don't want to go into the complete workflow and just want to quickly come into the system, create a requirement, and just get done away with, right? So this is how we have created a requirement, right? So these requirements, it's so easy to play around with these requirements right now, right? So you can just create these requirements quickly, come to the document view, just fill in the title and just fill in the description. You don't have to be worried about all the other mandatory fields that the form had, right? So at a very top level of structuring this data, you will really get a good crisp view about all the requirements that you are creating, right? So once now the data is now structured, right? Now you have defined the data, you have structured the data well. Now we are ready to go to the next level of tracking and reporting part of this whole plan, right? So we have planned our data, we have structured our data. Now we will look how we are going to track that data. So again, with this new deployment that we have done, right? Now there are two approaches. One is some customers really like to have a good high level view, right? They just want to have a quick summary in just 5 minutes to see what my progress is, right? So if you, as you have been working in this existing ReQtest, right? So we have a agile board, right? So the way internally I work with my client, right? I have created a quick agile board where I come up with a quick summary about that particular what we are doing, where we are at right now, and these stickies, you know, these stickies becomes just the quick action points to display, and these rows, these lanes becomes quick summary for what particular month or what particular sprint I'm showing the data. At a very high level, I can use this way to display my customer that this is how we are tracking the whole progress, right? You can customize the things according to your own business setup. So this is one good way of utilizing the agile board, right, for a quick high level summary. But not all the customers actually look for a high level summaries. Some people really like to dig deep. So the technical managers, the customers, or the heads in the corporates, right? They really want to look at the numbers. They really want to look at the reports and all on all the tracks that we are covering, right? So now for that reason, right, what with the new requirement module, what we have done is we have created a reporting view section, right? So this reporting view section is available at different levels. We have this reporting view at root level. We have it at the first parent level, right? You will find this reporting view at the sub levels also. And at the very final object level also, you will find these reporting. Now see the purpose of providing this reporting view, right, at all the levels is to enable or help any project manager, product manager, or even a scrum master, right, or even any customer to see how a particular track or a requirement, right, was done, whether it matched its cost versus output, right? So if I'm working on this sprint supposedly and my customer asked me, right, okay, let me show what was my sprint 19 like, okay? Okay, there were 18 requirements. We made around 120 test cases. We have this much of test coverage for each requirement. That's good. Okay, so there are these much number of tasks and these much number of test cases against those requirements. And this is what total time you guys estimated for that particular sprint, and this is how much you actually spent, right? And what was the quality in terms of bugs? Oh, okay, you have 32 number of bugs around there, right? So this is a holistic view, right? The same thing is available now, right? As we discussed in the previous section, if you have enabled your sprint development sprint field, my customer really don't need to go down to sub levels. He can just quickly come and just go to whichever sprints data he really wants to look at. I just want to have a look at sprint 19. This is how my sprint 19 looks like. But if a project manager has to go into the details of the data, okay, I just want to see which particular track took much time. Okay, I'll go to hotfix track. I can go to my reporting view. I can see, okay, these much number of requirements were there. I had these much number of test cases. Okay, I spent around 483 hours on this track. And how much did I spend on my feature development? Okay, I am spending this much time on my feature development, right? So this levels at different levels, reporting views can be used from different perspective. It totally depends who is using and in what context it is being used, right? And as I told you, right, so the sprint feature, it gives you the holistic view. This is one amazing features for all those people who are working in agile model. They can just quickly select their sprints and can get the data for that particular sprint also, right? So, so the reporting view is one key functionality to help us in tracking our particular progress, right? So the reporting view was giving a holistic overview of each track or level that we work on. Now, but the different business setups could have their own business indicators, right? That needs to be reported. For that, now what we can do is we can create reports based on that data also, on which the report is generated. I'm sure most of the audience will be very much aware of the next section that I'll be touching on, right? So a lot of people are working on views, right? So the reporting part. So we have seen how we can plan, we can structure our data. We have seen how we are tracking our data through reporting view. But now we can see how we can actually report our data, right? And using our views, right? So in case of views, right? So I'm sure you are aware how to create and manage views, right? So you know how we create views and how we manage views, right? And how we can save views, we can reset views. There are some system default views available that give you very holistic picture also, right? If now there are some system generated available system like views like reporting view task. So on each and every requirement, I can see in my grid itself how many tasks for each requirement, what was the total time spent on each task, and how much we actually spent on each task, right? So you really get from these views which are system generated, but not always that you can use a system generated. Because of our business needs, we will be trying to customize those views. So just some perspective from my side, the way I use my views in my business needs is I first foremost identify, right, what are the key fields that should actually be the part of that view so that it covers my key indicators to be presented as part of my report, right? So ultimately, my views will become the basis of the reports that I will generate. If I have selected the right elements, and by the elements that I mean is if I have done right selection while creating my view, that I need supposedly my KPIs is to show how many bugs are open, right? Obviously, then I know that I need to include my status field in my view. Well, okay, if my customer says I want to see what all particular requirements were done in which particular development sprint, right? So then I will go and manage my views and add the development sprint field out here, right? So there is, I will just go and add this development sprint field out here in my view. And the same way it will start working. If my customer is asking, okay, I just want those tickets that were reported by sales, okay, then I'll add this column, right? So the context is when you are defining your views, you just have to key one thing: what is your need of your customer, what kind of KPIs he is looking from you, and what elements or what fields actually you should incorporate in your views so that the report can be generated accordingly, right? And one best practice from my side, right? One best practice is always remember the naming conventions for views, right? Try to differentiate between your internal team views and your management views. I'm telling you, customers always appreciate when they find such kind of tagged views which have management, right? So they know this management view is for them, right? So these views I have created, right? These views, as we said, become basis for generating the report. Let me quickly show you, right, from this perspective, right? I have created this one view for my customer where it completely shows all the requirements that are there in the system right now, right? So my view, the way I have structured my view is I have taken the right components, the right fields actually, like where's the status, the priority, development sprint field, right? And I have taken fields like sales and fresh desk, like, so, so that ways when my customer asks me, okay, Karan, show me what all CRs are going in which particular sprint and what are their status, right? So this is a kind of a quick summary you will be able to see in a tabular format. You will be able to see from the pie charts, and you can always convert into the bar charts, right? The same view, if he asks me tomorrow, right, show me all the tickets that are from sales, I can just select the same view. I'll get a quick summary and I can show these are from sales and these are their status. Same thing, right? Show me from the product, right? So when we create our views, right, the views become very critical. How we create our views, if we have structured our views in a right format with right element with right indicators, I'm telling you the reports will be crisp, the reports will be amazing, and you can do a lot of wonder with those reports, right? So just to summarize this whole journey, right? Now, if the process and terminologies are well defined with the customer and with all the stakeholders, it actually helps you in structuring your data well, right? So if your data is structured well, right, it helps in creating very relevant views. And if our views contain relevant data, we can always utilize them to create and communicate our business objective through reports to our customer, right? And all these aspects are well connected and very much achievable through ReQtest itself. You really don't want to use Excels anymore. You don't want to go through documents anymore. Any other tools to be integrated to ReQtest itself can be self-sufficient for that, right? So that's all from my side, and I hope I could inspire you or enable you to see the different aspects of ReQtest as a tool and how we can utilize it in our day-to-day business functions, right? So over to you, Mazhar. Yeah, thank you.
So thanks a lot, Kalam, for that. I see we already got a couple of questions. Before we start answering them, I'm just going to take the final slide here. Let's see here. All right. So let's see. This is where we were. And by the way, if you have questions, again, just put them in the QA box, and we will come back to them later. But I would say that the key takeaways from this presentation is really that you should understand by now, or at least be inspired to see that, you know, which capabilities ReQtest actually has to be more extensively used for your planning and tracking reporting phases. Now, you might even use it more extensively than what we just showed you. And if that's the case, please let us know. And for those of you who aren't there quite yet, there are a lot of things we can help you out with there. So, you know, reach out to your customer success manager. They're usually the best one to help. The second point, I would say key takeaway, is that in the end of the day, you know, ReQtest is a tool, and a tool can do a lot, especially if the processes, the terminology is well done in a way that suits your business needs and your organization needs. So a part of having a tool is really to support your processes. So if you need any support on those parts, again, let us know. But it's important that you really think about, you know, what does a closed item mean? What does it mean when it's new or open, and these kind of things? And does everybody really understand what these things actually mean? What's a prior one? What's a prior two? And so on. The third thing that I think is really important here is that, because we get a lot of this, and it's that people tell me all the time, well, you know, we use Jira, or my supplier or my customers using Jira, how can we work together? Or it might be another tool, it might be Azure DevOps. And it doesn't really matter if it's an external R&D partner, or if it's an internal IT and R&D house or division. In the end of the day, you don't really need to change tools. You can either use our APIs or available integrations. And if there's no available integrations, please let us know and try to prioritize it. But the thing here is that these different tools have different purposes, and together they are stronger. So we do want you to actually use other tools than ReQtest that collides with ReQtest, or have certain overlap with ReQtest as well, because it creates value for your customer, or the person you deliver to, or the quality assurance team that, you know, usually Jira is more of a development tool, and you need to connect it with a test management tool anyways. Fourth thing here is really that the way we're doing this is that we were actually successful in going from utilizing a lot of documents and Excels with scattered data across, who knows where. Was always the discussions on the meetings of, okay, so where's that data? How does it look? Can you drill it down? Oh, I need to open another Excel. The meetings were not constructive. They were not, we couldn't focus on the future. We were just focusing on the data. So now we can focus on the future, because we have data that's fully accessible and transparent. And I think when I say transparent, it really means that people understand what's there. It's not only that the data is there, people should understand it. And again, I'm sure I said a couple of times now, but if you like what you see and you want to do it yourself, be my guest. And if you feel that you need any support whatsoever, you just reach out to us and we'll do whatever we can to get you to this point. Now we're just getting to the Q&A section, so I'll start answering some questions here. Some will be to me, some will be to Karan. If I begin with the first question, why can't I get this up now? Let's see here. Oh yeah, I know why. Right. Stop share. All right. So going to the questions. The first question, and I think this could be relevant for those who come in a bit later. So this session is being recorded. That means that if you missed it in the beginning or missed any part of it whatsoever, I will send it to you, all of you attendees, at my earliest convenience, hopefully tomorrow. And if you feel that this is something that you want to share with your colleagues, please do. In the end of the day, there's two sides of the, the persons who are ordering what they want in the tool and the ones who are delivering the tool. And I think both sides can have value of this presentation. Now, if we go to the next question, and maybe here you can help me a bit with this one, Karan. And the next question is, in the requirements list, if we have a requirement that transcends level, for instance, that the requirements needs to be in both a sprint level and deferred backlog level, how is that mapped or handled? How would you handle that, Karan?
Okay, so if a requirement has to be available into, see, the two different levels, right? Mm-hmm. If I go by some kind of a fact, right? A requirement, if I'm picking it in my sprint, that means I'm developing that requirement, and it will be not very sufficient to have that requirement in a deferred backlog. But if there is any kind of a condition for one requirement to have multiple parents, that means parent levels. So in that case, the only option is to clone that requirement, right? Create a duplicate requirement. There is a feature, duplicate that requirement, keep one requirement in the sprint level and keep the other requirement in the deferred backlog. Mm-hmm. That is the best how we can map it and handle it.
And also to that, on that point, you can still create relationships between requirements. Yes. So you can do exactly like Karan is doing, and also add a link between these two and make it very obvious or relevant that these two are connected in some way. Now, I would also add that the sprint levels that Karan is showing, that's one way of working with it, to actually map the hierarchy per sprint. Now, some of our customers don't map the hierarchy to sprint, but rather to features or areas, and then they use the development track to actually track the sprint in the reporting views and other views. So that's another way of doing that. I hope that answered the question, and if not, Mr. Bestas, please let us know. To my next question, I have one asking two questions. We start with the first one. Let's see, does they have an integration with Excel? I mean, usually they use Excel, and sometimes they want to convert, but they don't might have the input to manually record. Okay, so I think if I take this back, is that can we integrate with Excel? So you can't really integrate with Excel, but we do have Excel import functionality, and this is used a lot, both for importing or exporting. So sometimes when I want to do some added data analysis, now ReQtest is good for showing stuff like, what are we doing right now, what will we be doing, and so on. But sometimes I personally want to analyze the data even further, so then I just export. So we have that functionality. And when it comes to importing, that's quite easy to use functionality. And when you use it, that's especially good in the beginning of projects, because it's still very common that you would create a lot of requirements easily in Excel and then import them and then continue to manage them in ReQtest and so on. So that's definitely possible. And second question here from the same person is that in development, is it possible to have another integration, not only Jira such as Redmine? So we don't currently support Redmine, but we do have our open APIs. Now, when it comes to planning of next integrations that up in the roadmap, we're looking at Azure DevOps, Microsoft Azure DevOps, and probably from there won't be far to Team Foundation Server, and also some test automation that we're looking into. But if you don't have this, so a lot of our customers have actually made their own integration to our APIs, because it's not a difficult API to connect to. And until they connect, they usually just use our import and export functionality. But if you want to have data synchronized all the time, we would like you to use our API. And if you want to use our API, again, go back to customer success management. They'll give you all the necessary documentation, and they will also introduce you to our R&D personnel that can support you in doing that. We have another question, and this one is for you, Karan. And by the way, while I'm getting answering question, feel free to put in more question. This question is really for you, Karan, and it's from a previous meeting. I think we got this as well. It's how was it difficult for you to actually get to this point? I mean, what did you do to get to basically from the problems you had in the beginning to this kind of solution? How much work was that?
So I guess as I have also explained in my slides, also right in my communication, right? So I guess in any business setup, the biggest challenge is always the first phase where you set the expectations with the client, right? So that was the biggest challenge, just to know what his expectations are, what he is looking from whatever reports we are presenting, what kind of data he is looking out from us, right? That is the essential part, and that is the part we really all have to, as part in any business, we should invest initially more, right?
Right.
I guess then gradually coming on to the tool, how to set it up, because once my whole track was defined, the terminology and process was defined with the customer, it was an easy process to structure accordingly, because ReQtest was flexible enough in accommodating. And finally, with the whole, see, we tested our own medicines also, right? That is why we came up with this new requirement module management, right? We know that there are a lot of different type of users, product managers, we have project managers, we have scrum masters working on this thing, architects working on this thing. They wanted to have a holistic, nice views, reports to be generated, different features. So I guess we tasted our own medicine. So we created something from our own experience, which was missing earlier in the system, right? So we created those elements itself in our system to enable us also, and hopefully we are enabling others also to these features. Yeah.
And that has been seen. So as an example, I believe this time when we did this a big upgrade project in early January, I think we had something like 5 bugs after that immense work, which I think, that's even lower than we were doing on some normal other things. But because we had a very tight way of working. Now, if I take an example of 1.5 years before that, when we did a similar size implementation, I think we had like 600 bugs. So the way we are working, the processes we have, the way we communicate, the way we report, and the way we utilize ReQtest has definitely made this possible. And that's the story we really want to share. And maybe we'll do that in another webinar as well.
Sure.
I have another question to you, Karan. How hard was it for you as a Jira person to learn and adopt ReQtest? And do you like using ReQtest?
Yes. Yeah. So we are partners. Definitely we like, it's like, it's a kind of a biased question, I understand, for many who will be listening, right? But apart from that, see, I have been working on Jira for quite some time, right? But ReQtest, the key feature of ReQtest is its simplicity. You can define your own workflows. Jira is a good tool, right? But it has immense workflows. It requires a lot of training for somebody to invest on it. Really, you have to understand their workflows, their intricacies, their configurations, then only you can set it up. Whereas ReQtest is what you see, what you get. It's easy. You can tweak, it's flexible, and you can just get the results you wanted, right? So it was easy for us, right, to get on board with this tool, right? We have been working with Jira, but it was easy. But yes, and we are utilizing it also, right? So overall, the story was good, right?
Yeah, and what I've seen also from a lot of customers is that when they use this, when they work with both Jira and ReQtest, it creates a perfect, bridging a gap between development capabilities and delivery capacity.
Yes.
Versus the business needs, and people working more on the business side, they're not really interested in exactly what development is doing. They want to check the high level things. They want an easy way to put in the needs they have, to track the quality, to see what's not working, how far have we progressed in a way that makes sense for them and easy. You know, a head of sales that's getting new CRM doesn't want to go into a Jira training.
Yes, that is very important. Nobody wants to look at the code reviews, what get pulls and pull requests, push requests, right? You don't really want to spend on those intricacies. You want a holistic, high-level view in terms of quality, in terms of reporting, and in terms of what tracks are planned and how they are planned and how much time you are investing on each track. Just that one. Not what the task is, how you broke down that task and all that stuff, right? That is core development side.
We got another question, and I'm not sure if you can answer this one, Karan, but if you can't, I do have some answers there as well, so we can maybe collaborate. But the question is, could you compare it to Jira's X-ray test management? And X-ray is an add-on, so it's an add-on that you can use on Jira for test management. Could you compare these two? Have you any experience with that?
No, in Jira, we never use like the test module part of it, like the add-on part of it. But as compared to the knowledge that I have personally, so I guess the extensive utility that we have in our ReQtest, the flexibility part with the test module, test runs, test module itself is structured nicely. You can create test cases independent of test suits. S2s are independent of test runs. And then test runs can be incorporated with all the test suits and test runs with checklist and with instructions, where those are like flat shape, right? You can just create test cases and you can just create releases and version to execute out there. That is what I have a knowledge on those.
So from my experience, X-ray, and I think this comes to a lot of, this is a bit more general explaining, and X-ray, and there are many add-ons for Jira. And I think the difference usually between having an add-on and having the integration. So usually when you have an add-on, you're getting a extra part inside the Jira application. So if you're a primarily development focus and you have a development team, I think, you know, it can make sense to have that part as well for maybe for all the QA people. But as long as you're working with the business side, if you're working with the user acceptance testing or other organizations that you don't want to really see all the details of development, you need to have another tool as well. Something else that I see is usually the pricing of how these work. And because usually when you have an add-on, is that the add-on pricing wise, basically they charge per user that you have in Jira. And you don't need to have thousands of users in ReQtest, even though we have someone who has that. Usually for organization, if you have 200 developers in ReQtest, you actually don't need to have the 200 developers in ReQtest as well. So you just need to have the people that you think should be in ReQtest, and the people should be in Jira, and then there's still the information can flow freely. So I think that's the different part. Another part is that we always get, and usually get, is that we are extremely user friendly, and that's because when we design this not only for, you know, it's not built by engineers only for engineers. And I think we do put that into a lot of consideration because we cover all industries. And when you cover all industries, you need to make it, you know, possible for someone who's using as for instance, a nurse at the hospital, and we have a lot of hospital customers. If she wants to try the new journal system, she needs an easy way to communicate back. And if you're not making that communication back easy, then you're losing a lot of the information for quality management. So I think that's what really we want to make it easy for people to communicate, to keep the status up on how things are doing. Other than that, for those of you who are really interested in how we compare, I suggest that you catch up with me, Maziar, and I do have some benchmarks that we received from some third parties, so we can definitely share some of that. Do we have any other questions? So until I wait for other questions, I can tell you another question that we got on a previous webinar. So this is the third one we're doing of this particular topic. A question was, some were really interested in what we showed here in the requirement management. So we actually do have another webinar for requirement management. You can find it in our help pages. We also did one very recently on Jira plus ReQtest. So how we show how you both set it up, what's the value you get out of it, and how can you utilize it. So we do have a video for that. And if there's anything that you don't find a video for, a webinar, a current one, please let us know, because we're always looking for topics that are relevant for you, our users, our customers, that can be utilized in the best way possible. So so far, I think these webinars have gone really nicely. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. And the reason why we're getting positive feedback is because we're delivering on the request. Let's see here. Okay. So by being very transparent, I got just a funny question about putting a requirement, ability to copy test suites on your backlog. So Charlotta, please go back to us on that one and see if we can reprioritize that. Because a backlog doesn't mean always just backlog. Is that we're trying to keep it on a sprint level. It just means it's not in the current sprints. It will still be there in a year. I promise you that. And when I say in a year, I mean this year. So we have a lot of interesting things. I can take you to. We told you about Azure DevOps. I told you about some test automation. We're looking into how we can integrate, and we're also looking into how to connect with other tools. And those other tools, you know, we really want you to tell us what tools you're working with. It will make us much easier to prioritize. Other than that, we've received a lot of good feedback from persons like Charlotta here. And whatever you got, I mean, let us know. We always put it in ReQtest. We always manage it. We always have a lot of tough discussions on which one we should get now, which one we should get next month, and so on. I hope that you see and understand that whatever you see here, most of it's actually from our customers. Now, personally, I want to have everything yesterday, but you know, Karan is still delivering very well, so I'm trusting Karan to deliver. Do we have anything else here? All right. I don't see anything else. But again, if you get any questions afterward, again, you know, we're not going anywhere. We've been here for ReQtest, been a product for 15 years and a company for over 10 years now, and hopefully we'll be here for many years to come with you as customers. So whatever you want, or whatever you want to ask, whatever your needs are, keep in touch with us. We'll do the best we can to continue on delivering on a great product, to make sure that you have great projects. Karan, do you have any final words?
Yeah, so look out for some amazing features. We are really investing our time listening to our customers, right? All those NPS surveys and everything are very fruitful for us, and we really get a good feedback from our customer success managers also. They come up with some expectation. And I'm glad I just saw that message right now. Yes, something is in backlog. Well, definitely will be taking up a lot of things up, right? Yeah. This year is to look out from the perspective of integration. A lot of new integration and to new tools are expected and on the way. Yeah.
You know, and I might as well say it now. For next webinar, we're planning it in the end of May. I think it will be very interesting for some of you here, which I can see, because we will do a sneak preview of our ERP accelerator. So a lot of you work on ERP projects. We're going to show how some of our customers sets it up, and the presenter is going to be our CEO, Henrik Andreasson, together with a gentleman that's actually a founder, one of the co-founder of IFS, which is I think probably the biggest, if not one of the biggest Nordic ERP vendors out there. So that's going to be super interesting. So again, you know, if you have questions, I want to see how you work on an ERP project, Maziar, or how can we utilize the Agile board? It's the questions that drives the webinar. It's the questions that drives our product. So feel free to ask questions. But as it seems, we're getting to the end of the day here in Sweden, and probably pretty early for some of you out there, and super late for some other. Let's wrap this presentation up. I'll be sending you out the recording of the webinar. And if you have any questions at that time, please let us know. Karan, thank you for contributing. Thank you for participating and showing your side of the story. And for the rest of you, all of you customers, thank you for making time. Thank you for being customers. And thank you for wanting to improve and having the trust in us to support you in doing that.
Yeah. Thank you, Maziar, and thank you everyone who joined us.
Bye-bye. All right.
Bye-bye.